part 3 of this page, comparing Carnegie and Rockefeller. Carnegie and Rockefeller are two models of two different types of business practices. The federal government, remember, assisted with pro-business development, such as protective tariffs, protecting industries from outside foreign competition. The government broke up workers' unions. We can talk about this again later. Violent expansions into foreign countries. More on this later. This is all Unit 5. So the government is helping to promote this. But generally speaking, the federal government promoted entrepreneurs, allowing entrepreneurs to use new technologies and tactics to create businesses. And at this point in history, this means allowing the creation of large corporations through new tactics and new technologies. And up until 1904-ish or so with Teddy Roosevelt, this meant allowing monopolies to exist. Some of the more famous monopolies are exemplified by Andrew Carnegie and John Rockefeller. This is Andrew Carnegie, at one point one of the richest men in the world, perhaps one of the richest men ever. He used the new business model of vertical integration, which I'll show you about in a second. And he used a new technology known as the Bessemer process. The Bessemer process is also called the open hearth method. You can see it down here. This method was a way to make better steel at a cheaper price. And you can make a whole heck of a lot more of it. And he made gobs of money by making this cheaper, better steel. He also ends up developing something referred to as the gospel of wealth, in which by the end of his life he gave away most of his fortune before he died. But we'll get to that later, and we'll have to justify and contemplate whether Carnegie was a good man or a bad man or some mixture in between. His business model was vertical integration. And vertical integration is a kind of monopoly that Americans sort of appreciate because the corporation owns all of the means of production, from the raw materials all the way through the sale of the product. Carnegie would own the iron ore that was necessary to make steel. He would own the mines that the iron ore was in. He would own the railroads that took the iron ore to his factory. He owned the factory. He owned the railroads that took the material to the cities in which he would sell it. And he owned the retail markets that would sell it. And what that means is he doesn't have to pay a middleman. He doesn't have to pay the mine owner a profit. He doesn't have to pay the railroad person a profit. He doesn't have to pay rent on his factory, right? And because of that, he can charge a cheaper rate. We call this vertical integration. This is his factory in, I forget where it is. This is a fisheye view of his factory in Pennsylvania. Compare that to John Rockefeller and Standard Oil. Rockefeller was also known as Rockefeller. He used horizontal integration and a lot of dirty tactics to drive competitors out of business. He used spies. He extorted rebates, which is where the railroads have to give him money back if he used their railroad company. He drove competition out of business by slashing prices in a given area and then raising them elsewhere. And once his competition was out of business, he just jacked up the prices. He developed a trust where small oil companies would have to give him a percentage of their stock, a controlling percentage of the stock. Otherwise, he'd put them out of business. So that means that he's controlling all of the little companies, all these small little oil companies in a given area. He called it Standard Oil Company. Think of it this way. It's horizontal integration. Company A, B, C, and D would have to give up all of their stock, or at least a controlling interest of their stock, and in return they'd get some of the profits, but Super Company, in this case Standard Oil, was able to control all of the actions. This is called a trust because they trusted the stock to the bigger company, and if they didn't, they were put out of business.